اقرأ أخيا ورتل القرآن اصبح بصوتك اسمع الأكوان اقرأ كلام الله داوي نفوسنا لنحس في أعماقنا الإيمان
من فؤاد كالحجارة قسوة فإذا وعى القرآن حين لانا كم من فؤاد كالحجارة.
Verily all praise is due to Allah. We seek His help, we seek His aid. Whosoever Allah leads astray, there is no one to guide upright. I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship in truth except Allah alone. He has no partner, and all dominion is His. I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His messenger and seal of all the prophets. Jazakallah khair for inviting me here. It's an honor and pleasure to be amongst the Shibab. Jazakallah khair for your patience. Basically, I started giving a little intro who my background and where I come from. I was born to Muslim parents in Newark, New Jersey. My parents converted to Islam, by the way. African American father, a Puerto Rican and Cuban mother. But at a very young age, when I was 3 years old, I was in a house with my 6-month-old brother, and I had a 4-year-old brother at the time. My mother and father, they got murdered in front of me. So after the death of my parents, I moved with my grandparents, who happened to be Christians. They took me and my brothers in. So at this point in my life, my grandparents started raising us on the religion of Christianity. And I was in a household. I had a couple more cousins. As a matter of fact, it was a lot of us in the house. It was me, my brothers, cousins, aunties, uncles. So at a young age, what we started doing is started hanging in the streets. You know, it was too crowded in the house, so the first thing we started doing is hanging in the streets. So hanging in the streets started leading to getting ourselves in trouble. I always hung around older people. Even though I'm like 9, 10 years old, my friends was probably like 15, 16 years old. And the same with my brothers. So my brothers was older than me. I had cousins that was older than me. So I was always following older people, getting into trouble, etc. But at a very young age, I was trying to figure a way how to get myself up out of the hood. How can I get up out of the hood? So one of the things I started doing is writing poetry. Whatever I would see outside on the streets, I would go into my house and I would write it down. I would go to my room. If I see murder, if I see drug dealing, if I see fighting, I would go in the house and I would write a poem or a rap pertaining to what I just witnessed on the streets. It started to be a hobby for me, and I was trying to figure a way how can I get up out of the hood. So this is what I really started to get into. In America, especially back in the day, one of the easiest ways, especially for African Americans that's born in poverty, etc., one of the easiest ways we do, and maybe a lazy way to try to get up out of the hood without selling drugs, etc., is either turn into music, becoming a musician, becoming a basketball player, football player, becoming an athlete, etc. This was easy for people to do to get up out of the hood. So rapping became one of my hobbies. Also, at a young age, I had a childhood friend by the name of Gaddafi. Me and Gaddafi, his parents, his mother, and some of my relatives, they grew up with each other. They was friends with each other. And as a matter of fact, my birthday was a couple days before Gaddafi. And this is before I was a Muslim. Hopefully, Muslims celebrate their birthdays because, that's not permissible in Islam. But I used to celebrate my birthday. Me and him used to celebrate our birthdays together. So years went past and I lost contact with him, and I happened to run into his mother, and I asked how was he doing. She said he moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and he's trying to pursue a career in the music industry. And I told her that I was trying to do the same thing. She said, well, let me give you, his name was Yafeo. She said, well, let me give you Yafeo number because he's out in Atlanta. He have a half brother by the name of Tupac Shakur. And she asked me, have I ever heard of Tupac? At this time, Pac already released a rap record, so I was familiar with Tupac, and he was in some certain type of movies, some movies. So I said, yeah, I'm familiar with Pac, and she gave me Gaddafi number. Later on, he became Gaddafi. I don't want to confuse nobody, so we stick with Gaddafi. So when she gave me Gaddafi number, I spoke to him, and he said, as a matter of fact, I'm coming to New York in a couple days, which I was from New Jersey, which is 30 minutes from New York. So when him and Tupac came to New York, that's when I went over there. And I got to see an old friend of mine, and I met Tupac and the rest of the members who was with him, such as Castro, Malcolm, etc. So when I met Pac, he heard about the light. He heard what happened to my mother and father. And the first thing he said is, after he told me to rap, I rapped for him, basically like a tryout. He wanted to hear if I could rap, if I could hold my own, so I performed for him. And after that, he said, I heard what happened to your mother and father. And I remember he started crying. I remember it was like yesterday that tears started coming out his eyes. And he said that I want to try to help you get out of the hood. So he went back to Atlanta, and I was saying, I wonder if this guy going to keep his word or not, because growing up, I knew certain type of musicians that, other celebrities that promised, yeah, I'm going to come back and I'm going to get you, we're going to do an album together, etc. But a couple weeks later, I got a phone call from Gaddafi and Tupac and them, and they said, Pop wants you to move to Atlanta. So that's what I done. I moved from New Jersey and I moved out to Atlanta. And when I moved to Atlanta, a couple months later, Tupac got shot. If anybody familiar with, Tupac and the Outlaws and Death Row, they remember that he got shot for the first time. And he got shot in New York, and that's when he got incarcerated. So after he got incarcerated, me and the rest of the Outlaws, at this time we was called Young Thugs. We was Young Thugs, and then we changed our name to Dramacidal, and then we changed our name to the Outlaws. It was Outlaw Immortals, and then it became Outlaws. So after this time, Tupac gave us all names of so-called tyrants, or so-called enemies of the West, or so-called people that had just a bad name in history. He gave one of the members, Malcolm, he gave him the name Idi Amin after the Uganda president. He gave Katari, which is Tupac's little cousin, he gave him the name of Castro after the Cuban president. He gave Yafeo, his half brother, the name Gaddafi after the Libyan president. Another member, his name was Fatal. Tupac named him Hussein after Saddam Hussein. Tupac changed his name to Machiavelli. And when I was younger, I had a very bad temper. And we used to joke around, we used to clown a lot. And Tupac said the reason why I have a bad temper is because I'm short. And I had the short man complex, so he said, I'm going to call you Napoleon. So that's how I got the name Napoleon, because he was known to be a short man. And they used to say he had the Napoleonic complex, and this is why he tried to conquer the world, because he was angry of his size, etc. So he named me Napoleon. And after forming the Outlaws, we started doing music. And I remember Tupac got arrested, so I said, how can I get on now, man? I come from New Jersey, this is my dream. As soon as I get to New Jersey, the guy that I'm supposed to do music with, he's in prison. So how are we going to move forward and do music? But from prison, Tupac, he was just directing us. He had called from prison and said, I have a name for a title. I want y'all to do a song called this. I want y'all to do a record called this. So we was collaborating while he was in jail. He was calling us and he was saying, make a chorus like this and make a chorus like that. Even at one time, we even did a song with him from jail. He called from jail and we put the speaker to the microphone and he started rapping from prison. And we tried to make a song like that, but it didn't come out too well, so we never put it out. So after the arrest of Tupac, Tupac signed a contract with Death Row Records. Any of y'all familiar with Death Row Records? Death Row Records at this time was the #1 rap record that was #1 internationally in America. It was selling the most hip-hop records. Death Row Records was ran by Suge Knight, and it also had members like Snoop Dogg. They had Dr. Dre, they had the Dog Pound, DJ Quick, Lady Rage, etc. So when Tupac was in prison, he signed a contract with Death Row Records, and he called and he said, when I get released, we all gonna move to Los Angeles. So when Pac got home from prison, that's what we done, we moved to Los Angeles with him. And at this point, the first thing I remember when we got to LA, Tupac, the first thing he wanted to do was go to the studio and start recording. And he started recording songs, I'm talking about 3 or 4 songs. Every morning we leaving out of the studio, 5 o'clock in the morning. Every single day he was recording songs, and this is the reason why he has so many records that comes out every year. He's been dead for over 10 years, but every year they release another Tupac album, to the point that it got a lot of the youth, especially the Muslim youth as well, thinking that he's still alive. And one of the reasons why his music is still coming out, because he performed he recorded so many every year. So everyday records that he had enough to continue to put out. He stayed in the studio, he was a hard worker. And he came out with an album called All Eyes on Me, and this album sold millions of records. I was able to perform on, I think, about 6 songs on that record. The record, I think, now today sold 20 million records. Before that, the first record that I performed was a record called Me Against the World with Tupac. I think that record sold about 7 million records. And things started changing, especially for me as a youth leaving the hood, to be driving down the street and people listening to my music, and people started to recognize us. We were going to the mall, people started recognizing Tupac, etc., and people screaming. We thought that this lifestyle would never come to an end.